I've been a passionate hunter ever since my dad before me started taking me out on trips. Every Saturday morning when the world was still silver with dew, and I thought I would pass down the same tradition to my son. During the setting of this story, my son Leo was 10 years old. I figured that was a good age to introduce him to the world of hunting, to teach him respect for nature, for the weapon, and for the cycle of life. I armed Leo and myself with Winchester Model 70 bolt-action rifles. I carried his until I found the spot where I usually find game, a quiet grove of ancient hemlocks, where the deer trails crossed. We could have used the old deer hunting tower hidden deeper in the woods, a skeletal structure of weathered pine, but I figured that wouldn't be the best first-time experience. I wanted him to feel the earth, not creaking wood. I handed him the gun when we were set up in a natural blind of fallen logs and ferns. I had already taught him the basics of firearm safety in our backyard, so it wasn't like I was taking him out there with no experience. His small hands knew the weight and the rules. I chose to stay put the first time, as it would be easier for him to focus, and I figured I would move up to the more advanced methods of stalking and tracking in the future sessions. There was a lot of waiting, more waiting than usual in this certain spot. The woods were preternaturally still, not even a squirrel chattering. I could see Leo was getting bored, his initial low fading as he constantly yawned and sighed, fidgeting with the collar of his orange vest. That disappointed me. I didn't want him to think this sacred patience was just boredom, so I packed up our stuff quietly and told him we're moving to a new spot. He seemed to perk up a bit with a fresh spark of excitement, and that made me happy. As soon as we began walking, the soft carpet of pine needles underfoot, I heard footsteps that weren't ours. They were deliberate, slow crunches slightly out of sync with our own. I put my arm in front of Leo silently and motioned for him to raise his gun. He did so, his eyes wide with a hunter's focus, until I spotted someone's head peer out from around the thick, gnarled trunk of an oak in the distance, maybe 60 yards away. The face was pale, a stark smudge against the dark bark. I pushed the gun down immediately, a bit disappointed we hadn't found game, but also intensely relieved that Leo didn't shoot. I gave the figure a quick, little apologetic wave, the universal hunter's signal, and with that, he disappeared back behind the tree as smoothly as a shadow, out of sight. Was he another hunter? I couldn't tell. He wore no visible orange, but from what I saw of him, even at that distance, there was something off-putting about his face, a flat, expressionless quality, like a mask. I couldn't put my finger on what it was at that moment, but a cold trickle of unease ran down my spine. Seeing somebody this deep into the Greywater backcountry was rare and also strange, and this guy didn't exactly look like a hunter. His clothes seemed dark and plain, more like workman's gear. So, as a safety precaution, I suppose, I steered Leo in the other direction, deeper into a ravine where the air grew cooler. Still no sign of any deer. Leo asked me about the man in a hushed tone. Who do you think he was? Dad? Is he lost? As expected. And I just told him I didn't know, and I didn't think we should get closer. I didn't want to lie to him, but I also didn't want to seed fear. A few minutes later, Leo started complaining that he was hungry. I was getting pretty hungry myself, the adrenaline dip leaving me hollow. So we stopped on a sun-warmed rock and unpacked our snacks, granola bars, and beef jerky. I was extremely disappointed that nothing had happened by now. No teaching moment, no proud first harvest. While eating my sandwich, I heard footsteps again in the distance, from the ridge above us. Leo did too, as he immediately put down his bar and picked up his rifle, pointing it up the slope. I felt my heart drop into my stomach when I could see the same man from before, peering out from behind another tree, this time closer. He was just standing there, head tilted, watching us eat. I lowered Leo's gun again and I noticed he seemed a bit uncomfortable now, scooting closer to me, as was I. The man's gaze felt heavy. I told Leo to wait there, to stay absolutely still, while I began to walk over towards the man, trying to emotionally prepare myself to confront him, to ask what his problem was. About halfway over, the damp leaves squelching under my boots, I stopped and thought to myself, what the hell am I doing? My son is right over there. This wasn't a dispute between hunters over territory. This was something else. The silence from the watching man was aggressive. I turned around and hurried back to Leo, my pace quick, telling him in a low, firm voice that it's time to go. Now, if you had your son in the middle of the woods and you thought you were being stalked, Odds are you would just want to get out of there. 2. We were not running. We were merely walking, but with purpose. Back towards the old logging road that was our lifeline. I was mentally waiting for a twig snap or a leaf crunch from behind us, my neck prickling, and when it happened, a distinct crack to our left eye nudged Leo to go ahead, to keep walking straight. I angrily turned around, my fear boiling over into rage, and stormed towards the sound, where the man was once again peering from behind a towering pine. I'd say when I got within 30 feet from the tree, he moved back behind it, out of sight, and then I heard a soft, wet thud, as if something heavy and unyielding had been dropped onto the mossy ground. I had my gun loaded in my hand, my finger outside the trigger guard, but close, as I cautiously walked up to the tree. I didn't even call out. I don't know why. All I did was slowly creep up to the tree, the world narrowing to the edge of that bark. And when I got there, I felt as if everything around me, the birdsong, the wind, the light, had completely collapsed, or rather ceased to exist, and all that I could focus on was the head laying face first on the ground in front of me. A man's head, short-cropped, gray hair, eyes open and clouded, no body, just the head, severed roughly at the neck. I didn't even look up or around the tree to see who had dropped it there. My body moved before my mind could. I just fell back and sprinted to Leo, grabbing his arm, and told him to run. Don't look back. We made it back to the truck, parked on the gravel forestry road, within what felt like 5 minutes of blind flight, and I made 100% sure we were UN followed, watching the tree line until my eyes ached. However, I stayed up the whole night in our living room, rifle across my lap, keeping watch for the sake of my family's safety. I found out the next day through my wife, who heard it at the general store, that there had been 2 disappearances of local hunters over the past month in Greywater. And that's when I called the police and reported what I had experienced, leaving out nothing. I had to, of course, play it safe for a long time, at least a full season, before even considering taking my son out into the woods again. What baffles me, though, is how this person managed to ambush and kill 2 experienced hunters who obviously had to be armed with some kind of weapon. It speaks to something more than mere human cunning. I have since resumed hunting with my son, but we never go back to the Hemlock Grove, and I never let him out of my sight. It was my first time hunting. I was 21, going with my friends, Asher, Cole, Ben, and his girlfriend Lena, to the Black Pine National Reserve in Colorado to go elk hunting. We brought 2 separate foreman tents that were relatively large, expensive cold weather sleeping bags, 2 days worth of food and drinks, and of course, guns. I couldn't even tell you the name of the gun Asher handed me. It was just a basic looking, wood-stocked hunting rifle, cold and foreign in my hands. Honestly, I didn't know how I felt about the whole thing. Killing a living, breathing animal that has just as much of a will to live as me. It didn't seem cool. But it was like the 5th time Asher had offered, and I felt like I had to say yes to prove I wasn't the city kid they all thought I was. I decided I wouldn't shoot any animals about halfway through the car ride, watching the dense pines swallow the mountainside. Asher pulled into a deserted gravel lot at the trailhead. We unpacked the car under a slate-gray sky and proceeded to hike about a mile into the woods, along a fading game trail before setting up camp in a small, gloomy clearing. First thing after setting up camp, we all followed Asher's lead, as he proudly babbled on about wind direction, elk calls, and tracking sport. I wished I had someone to laugh about it with, to share, but everyone else seemed serious about it as well, nodding along. I tried busting Asher's chops by asking him, wouldn't it be better to stop talking if you don't want to scare away any potential prey? He got pissed, his face hardening. I could tell he took this really seriously, like it was a religion, and from there on, I shut up, and by there on I mean however long things were going normal, and that wasn't long. During our hunt, fanning out, but staying in sight, we ran into a rather strange group of people. 3 rather large, dirty men with long, matted hair that looked sticky with pine sap. Their clothes were mismatched flannel and filthy jeans. They looked like they belonged to some kind of inbred family, the kind you hear whispers about, living deep in the woods off-grid. They didn't smile. They just looked at us, their eyes moving slowly from our faces to our rifles, and sorta nodded their heads once, as if to say a silent hello as we passed by them single file on the narrow path. We were officially freaked out, It might sound like something that would be laughable in a bar story, but under the circumstances, the sheer isolation, it was horrifying. We were deep in the black pine, far from the lot, which was, for the record, completely empty, aside from our car. And it may sound exaggerated, but these three looked like creepy lowlifes who could be dangerous. You could feel a wrongness radiating off them. Thankfully, though, they didn't follow us, which allowed for us to peacefully, if nervously, go on with our hunt. Asher ended up killing a young buck later that afternoon. We didn't find any elk. We dragged the deer, a heavy, limp weight, all the way back to our campsite, and that was actually our dinner for the night. Asher and Ben went through a disgusting, bloody process of skinning and, I'm pretty sure, gutting the deer. But I didn't watch for more than a few seconds. The metallic smell turning my stomach. Asher, ever the preparer, made us venison burgers over the fire. He came prepared with the buns, lettuce, and everything. While I didn't particularly agree with the sport, I had to admit, I was impressed with Asher's grim efficiency. We went to sleep first thing at dark. A cold settling in, with the fire still smoldering outside, and I was having a really bad time trying to get comfortable in that mummy-style sleeping bag. Asher and Cole seemed to fall asleep quickly, their breathing becoming deep and rhythmic, while I, on the other hand, felt trapped, claustrophobic, and had to be rolling around for what felt like at least 2 hours. I've always had a hard time falling asleep in new places. I was actually about to unzip and get up to go outside to pee when I heard footsteps, careful crunches coming from outside our tent, circling it. I opened my mouth to call out Ben or Lena's name, thinking they might be up, but I realized, my blood going cold. But if it wasn't them, I laid silently, barely breathing, and listened. In an unexpected instant, the zipper to our tent got pulled down with a slow, rasping sound. I threw my head down to the side and shut my eyes tight, acting as if I were asleep, my heart hammering against my ribs. There was a short pause, filled with the sound of heavy breathing, before the zipper got pulled back up, teeth clicking shut. I waited, paralyzed, until the pairs of footsteps I could hear, 2 distinct sets, now moved away. They seemed to be moving towards Ben and Lena's tent, a dozen yards away. Then a horrible, naive thought hit me. It must have been Ben and Lena, and they must have been checking if we were asleep so they could, have some privacy, I guess. So, fueled by a sudden, stupid need to break the tension, I decided to play a little joke on them. It took about 5 minutes in the silent dark before I unzipped our tent and began creeping on my hands and knees over the cold ground toward their tent. Then I realized their tent's front flap was open, the zipper still undone. That's strange, I thought to myself, a new knot of fear forming in my gut. They wouldn't leave it open in this cold. I crept closer, a stupid grin dying on my face, expecting to scare the 2 lovebirds. But instead, when I got close enough to peer through the gap, the faint glow of a dying flashlight inside, I saw 2 men, their backs to me, huddled inside of the tent, doing something to Lena, who was limp on her sleeping pad. Ben was beside her, not moving. At that moment, understanding flooded me with ice water. I screamed as loud as I could, mostly out of pure, unadulterated fear, but also to wake everyone up. Asher and Cole stormed out from our tent behind me with their rifles. When the 2 men fled from the tent, scrambling out into the night, I realized something as the firelight caught their faces. They were 2 of the same 3 men we had seen earlier that day. Asher and Ben, who was now groggily stirring, fired rounds into the air above their direction to scare them off. The concussions violently loud in the silent forest. However, something even more horrifying happened after that. After the gunshots echoed away, we all looked around us, our flashlight beams cutting shaky paths through the darkness, completely horrified as figures men in almost all directions who were previously hiding in bushes and behind trees began to stand up and take off, crashing through the undergrowth in different directions. There weren't 3. There were at least 8 or 9 of them. We had been surrounded. We tried waking up Ben and Lena properly, but they seemed to have been injected with some kind of tranquilizer by the men. Lena had a small, bleeding puncture on her neck. We had no choice but to wait until they woke up, which took about maybe half an hour of the longest, most terror-filled minutes of our lives, standing guard back to each other, running back to the car in that pitch-black forest, half carrying our friends, the flashlight beams creating monstrous, leaping shadows, was one of the most horrifying moments of my life. We don't know who all those people were, but they could have been part of some secluded, feral community for all we knew, or even some kind of cannibalistic family hunting for a different kind of meat. We have no idea what they were planning on doing with Ben and Lena, but we're just happy we all got out of there with our lives.